leave it as is, amend them all to a lesser standard, or create that distinction between the arterial and collector streets. So that's just to kind of clarify where we are and what your options are here today. So any questions for me?
I'm going to close the public hearing.
No,
Oh,
I think there's some
some
other people that want to.
Oh, yeah. Well, I asked you to comment.
Okay. I'm Bob Hampton, owner of Hampton Development. I live at Woodcliff. My mailing address is 4089 South 84th in Omaha. And myself and Falcon Business Park, we can't sell any lots at all. We've had close to 2 years. The marketplace decides what they want. And they're going to Waterloo. They're going to Elkhorn. They're going all over, everywhere but Valley. And I think that before you press on, that we need to have a committee of stakeholders, of 2 or 3 planning commission members, the city council, and some landowners, and try to come up with a lot simpler solution. Because my design standards, which I believe were the first ones, are 50% brick or stone on the front, 25% on the side, windows, and this and that. Let me tell you, most of these people don't want windows on the sides and the rear. They want the wall space. And now to introduce a secondary potential, it makes no sense. We ought to be able to establish a minimum and work from that, because it's confusing enough right now. You know, you can't fix what Valley is by having too high design standards, or it's just, it'll be years before that happens. I don't think it's in anybody's best interest to wait years. The economy right now is, I think the word of the year is uncertain. And we've lost a lot of sales. They go to Waterloo. They go where there's lots of places. Now we have, and in my opinion, what Big Dog Construction Development is building in Waterloo is a pretty good base standard. If people want to build more, they will. But I can tell you, most of the buyers and the tenants, they're perfectly happy with how those buildings look, because they want a good price and a good rent. And now Tom Wortman is building 2 big buildings that are tan, and he owns a lot of these flex space buildings. They're not going to have glass garage doors or a bunch of excessive stone or any of that. Where are people going to go? They're going to go there. They're not going to come here. And I just think it would at least be worth getting a little working group together, not in this type of venue, but we sit in here like we do a lot of times, and talk about what makes sense to establish some minimum standards. The other thing, no property owners got any notice of this coming up at all. There's some property owners that aren't very happy. I can speak to one of them that supposedly he's in the highway overlay district. I don't think nobody really totally knows what the highway overlay district is. It's confusing, and it's only going to become more confusing. I don't think that helps Valley at all.
Bob, I got a problem with this, because when we set these up, you were in favor of them.
I was not in favor of them. No, you're wrong. You're wrong. I was not in favor of them. I pretty much got strong-armed to go with them, or you wouldn't file the final plat. Okay. So, well, no. Okay, don't go there. We got strong-armed. Falcon Business Park, he can't sell anything. Okay? Things change. The market changes. I remember sitting in here, planning commission and city council, when you guys were all over Jordan Machinery, oh, new business in town and this and that. They wouldn't fit the design standards. You know, don't get mad at me. The market changes.
I'm sorry about that. standards. And whether Waterloo has lower standards than we do, doesn't mean we have.
I don't know of any other towns that have town design standards.
We're really just listed a whole bunch of them that do. And ours are less than theirs.
Okay, right now Waterloo is overseen by Douglas County and Omaha Planning Department. They don't have design standards. Okay, I'm not going to argue with you. If you vote for this, time will tell, and you're going to be wrong. Let me tell you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
This is a statement you made. You said you can't fix Valley. Now, you made that twice when you were going through. So I'm really curious what's broken with Valley.
Well, everybody thinks Valley's full of boat dealerships and outside storage and mini storage, self-storage. Jordan Machinery's got outside storage. You've got the tractor place, ready-mix concrete plant,
We don't
all
have
that
any
stuff.
lists here.
Okay, I don't want to insult anybody.
Well, you did a real good job.
Okay, I'm done.
Thanks, Bob.
Time will tell.
Thanks, Bob. Any other comments from the audience? If not, close the public hearing.
I'll do it.
Wait a minute, one more.
I'm actually not Prater. I'm with JM Construction. We're around 314 West Rexmouth Road. These restrictions, we're in the process of considering building a new building over on our property over there. Essentially where the current McGill building is. We purchased that 6 months ago. We find that these design restrictions are cumbersome. We want to provide Valley a nice building. We want it to look good, but we do feel that the requirements are a little bit higher than what we'd like to see. And part of that is because we do see similar buildings going up in Waterloo, similar buildings going up in Fremont. I do understand that, the Gretnas, the Benningtons, the Bellevues of the world have higher design standards. They are along the interstate. They do draw a different crowd, I would say. Out here in Valley and Waterloo and Fremont, it seems like a lot of the crowd here is landscapers, it's construction workers, it's more industrial type businesses. And I think that that's where part of what Bob is getting at here is right now that is what the demand is for, is that type of business. And what I've seen with talking with John, with talking with Bob, with talking with a few other people is a lot of those businesses are going elsewhere because the competition is better elsewhere. And it's up to Valley to decide if they want to draw that business here in the next 5 to 10 years, or if they want to wait until Waterloo goes up and Valley becomes the only next best place. And that's an option for you guys to decide, obviously. I can't say one way or another. But I do know that there is a lot of costs associated with going from, what I would prefer is, I think Bob's mentioned it too, just like a kind of 4-foot skirt around a building on the sides of brick. It makes it look nice, it makes it look fancier, but it's not 50% brick, it's not 75% brick that adds a whole bunch of costs to the building. And I think looking at Valley, obviously these design standards changed a couple of years ago. Looking across Valley though, there's a lot of buildings that aren't anywhere even close to that. And I get part of the design standards are to increase that. I just know from the developer side of things, people who are trying to build a new building, next door is a middle building that has nothing. And now all of a sudden we're expected to build a building that's 50% brick, 20% windows, etc. And the building that we're proposing, or we'll be proposing hopefully in the future, we're potentially thinking about building it right where the McGill building's at. And right now, I think it's 3rd Street there. I don't know, in between McGill and Casey's. If we build the
You're talking the old Casey building.
no,
Oh,
to the west of Casey's. So we're thinking about possibly demoing that building, putting a new building there. Well, I have the frontage road frontage road, what is currently in between Casey's and us, that road. And so technically, I need to meet 50% brick for both the side and the front there. And
I think that's a location we want to look nice.
I agree, but I also think that side road is, do we need to be 50% brick on the side, or is a 4-foot brick skirt sufficient? I think that's a question worth pondering. Is it worth 50 to 100,000 more for our building to have brick on it? And if that's what you guys decide, that's what you guys decide. But like, there's actual cost associated with saying, hey, we need to have 50% brick versus a 4-foot brick skirt. I think we can have a nice building that you guys would think is a nice building without meeting that 50% brick standard. And maybe that's having a discussion panel that, you know, we can show some building designs that, you know, the ones that are going up in Waterloo, that they do have a brick skirt, they have windows out in front. I think those look really nice, and there's potential for that. But I also know, like, we are a construction company. Like, we're not going to have a Taj Mahal brick building there. Like that's not the type of building that we need. And I'm not going to sit here and say that's going to run us out of the valley. We don't want that to happen. But I do know that it's not necessarily ran other people out of valley, but it's prevented other people from coming to valley. And I think that's a discussion we're having amongst yourselves. And I guess that's my 2 cents on it.
You think having a nicer building built right now is worth less than 5 years or 10 years?
What do you mean by nicer building?
Well, if you build to our standards, do you think that building is going to be worth the same amount as what Waterloo is, or worth what you put into it?
Well, it'll be worth more because it's took more to build. Like, it costs more to build, so it should be worth more. Yes. That doesn't.
Well, you're really not out anything. You invest.
Well,
Invest the money.
it's do we have the money up front to do it? You know, it's easy to say, well, yeah, go put another $250,000 into a building to make it look nicer. Well, not everybody has that, and that's why people are going to Waterloo, is because they can build a building for $100,000 cheaper. And
Well, I believe people are going to Waterloo because they can't afford it.
yeah, they can't afford Omaha, but they also can't afford Valley, because I prefer to be in Valley over Waterloo. Better access. You got actually a couple restaurants here. We got the Casey's here. The amenities in Valley, I think, are better than Waterloo, but people are going to Waterloo because it's cheaper. They can build a cheaper building, and that's the economics of it. And I think that Valley can require more than what Waterloo has. I think that's where some people mentioned, you know, the 20% brick, which is basically a 4-foot brick skirt around the building. That can make a building look more than just a plain Jane metal building, but it still keeps costs comparable. And I think that's where I guess that's part of Rune's proposal too, is like, hey, if we want to lower the design standards in some of these areas, why don't we lower them across the board? Like,
It wasn't Rune's recommendation, it was an option.
it was an option, yeah, not necessarily his recommendation. It was an option, and it's just, do we make it easier for companies to come here and grow and get momentum going in some of these areas? And I guess another option would be, do you find these areas where we want some more of these industrial things? It seems like there's a lot of industrial areas already, but there's also some areas that are going to be more commercial stuff. You know, over by Ace Hardware over there is going to be, I'd say, more commercial type buildings. Maybe that area, make that area where the new grocery store is going in. Maybe those have higher standards. Obviously, that's putting different levels to it, but I think a lot of people are looking for this industrial type building in this area, and I just know I've heard with us, the recommendations have pushed people away, and I just think it's a consideration you guys need to definitely think about.
Thank you.
I agree. I like one comment, and that is, I mean, you're hearing all this and the cost and everything else, but one of the things that a lot of people are looking at, and it's not going to be easy, is affordable housing. That's the big thing that's happening around here. Now, how do you fit in the affordable housing with what the people are doing. That's what I think Waterloo started doing with what they're doing.
I mean, industrial buildings are the affordable buildings of commercial. If you're wanting to make that point.
No, I'm just talking, you were talking about people. You were talking about he hasn't been able to sell a house in 2 years or whatever. Well, is it the standard of the house, or is it what the people are willing to pay? I don't know. This is not a simple solution
It is.
you're going to get and be able to talk about it. So I don't know where we have to go from here. So sorry.
I guess I would just like to add, Kathy Knockreiner, so my husband Jim and I own JMN. We've been here, I think, 10 years, and it's a family business. Our son came to work for us a couple years ago. Our son-in-law's been with us 10 years. So our goal, due to the growth of our company, is to build a new office shop. We can't have an office shop with 20% windows on the side because we need the wall space inside the building, which is how this conversation got started specifically for us. And now hearing that exceptions you're not interested in granting exceptions, and trust me, I worked in corporate America for 30 years, I get that. It's hard. Once you make an exception, it happens more. It just puts us in an awkward place. We've outgrown our space, and now what options do we have? To build a shop office that has 20% windows on the side wall does not meet the needs of a shop building. And that has nothing to do with cost. We don't want windows looking into all of our tools and such inside of the building. So now we, as a company, just to make you all aware, have to think about where do we want to be, because maybe we don't build our office and shop here, and yet our goal plan was to help our kids' generation take over our business, which is why we've been buying land, was to accommodate our growth. So it makes it a challenge for us, and maybe makes it impossible for us to build a new shop office on that piece of land if that's the requirement from a Windows perspective. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Can you address that? Ruth?
Yeah, I can speak on the windows. So the windows that give the appearance of windows, they can be faux windows. There's windows now that are being built, windows on a current building that they're not actual windows. They just give the appearance of a window.
So it's like a false.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's allowed. So just to mention that, and then
Okay, well, thanks for
yeah.
clarifying
Well, I'm
that.
glad we could solve that right now.
And then I know you're mentioning the industrial. So just to reiterate, there is an industrially zoned lot right now that's being built on. Just as a reminder, industrial lots do not have these design standards. So I just want to make that clear. Industrial lots don't have the design standards. Future land use map. There's not a lot of industrial left in Valley if you look at the official zoning map right there. And then if you look at the future land use over here, we have some industrial space left here. And we have, this is pretty much all Valmont here, and that's American Concrete Products.
Yeah, I guess when I say industrial, I think of those contractor bay type buildings that are going up in Waterloo.
Correct.
That are more contractor who wants to be down in the back and just need a garage door bay to operate a business from.
Correct. And that brings up the question of the difference between commercial and industrial.
Yeah.
So currently the design standards are just for commercial. Industrial lots, and you guys will see some buildings going up right next to where Valley Landing is. That, remember, they discussed changing zoning, and they were industrial, so they didn't have to change their zoning. They were matching future land use map, and they were an existing industrial lot. They can build just metal buildings. So just keep that in mind. That you mentioning that
Good
triggered
Thank you.
my thought process there.
Anybody else has any comment here before I close the public hearing for the third time?
Just to clarify,
Discussion. One more. Oh, you didn't see this, number 4.
Hi, Jason Trushinsky, I own Grace Homes in Omaha, live in Elkhorn. Just had a clarifying question on the commercial C3 industrial, and there was no mention of transitional ag. So just clarifying that TA is not in that design standard.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Transitional ag is not yet. It's why it's transitional. All right. I guess we're at the discussion. Any more discussion by the members?
I think I'd like to have Rune just summarize and clarify for everybody just what we're being asked to vote on here, just so everybody's on the same page.
Sure. So the current one, Greg can probably help a little bit with Sue and Andrea. I wasn't really involved in this process very much. This didn't come from my department, quote unquote, which is me. This came from an outside source. So I'm playing a little bit of, maybe catch up's the wrong word, but I don't have intimate knowledge. I didn't write this. The original idea was to differentiate different types of streets, right? And then within differentiating the different types of streets, that would then change the requirements. For example, if you were on a collector, I'm going to call it a main road, right? You had the 50% brick, block, or stone, 20% windows, transparency requirements, that's the word I'm looking for. There were some other design standards, anything over 100 feet, you had to break up with a different roof line, this type of stuff. This proposal was to essentially try and make each street its own different type based on state definitions, which are gray. Greg and I talked about it for about 45 minutes about what the difference between an arterial, a connector, and a local is. So which then brought up my thought of saying, well, we're going to have this conversation. I don't want to say disagreement, but I'm going to have this conversation with every contractor moving forward who's trying to build on a commercial lot, right? So the original plan was to differentiate all these different streets, and then if you were on a main, I'm just going to call it a main street, you had the design requirements. If you were on I'm going to call it a side street, you, instead of having 50% brick, block, or stone, you had a 25% brick, block, or stone on the front and 5% on the sides. That's why when you were asking about that other one, hold on a second, that's where now they are on a main street. So after talking with Greg, my recommendation was if this is truly going forward, to make my job easier, just to make it across the board, because then we're not trying to differentiate between, well, this particular lot is, a lot might have 3 streets up against it. Which, what, right? So that's kind of where we're at now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So a question for Greg.
Good, we get it involved.
Would you anticipate using the federal classification of road standards to define arterials, collectors, along?
Basically, yeah, good question, Hal. Basically, when this came up is that I had pulled out the state of Nebraska road board classifications for arterial streets, collector streets, and local streets as the 3 categories, and the top 2 arterials and collector streets being tier 1, if you want to start calling them tiers, and then the local streets would be the tier 2 standards, if you will, and that would be the aesthetics thing. So your main roads that Rune's talking about are your mile roads that you have gridded out, or the highways system, stuff like that. And then your local streets are those ones that are off the feeders. If we want to pick on Falcon Business Park as an example, of course you have West Street going through there, that's your main collector arterial street, and then the 2 cul-de-sacs, of course, just being local streets, that would be a secondary interpretation of how that would apply. And of course, then you have Highway 64 on the one side as well, that would affect some of those lots as well.
And I would think in terms of definition, it would be where the front faces. So if you did have 2 side streets, it's where the front faces as opposed to which one you would accept. So we could be very definitive in this. We got a map that's approved by the state of Nebraska that defines these roads. They don't change like willy-nilly. They don't.
Right.
They're pretty well defined.
I think the highway functional classification map that's produced by the state, actually, I've looked at it, but I think it's only Highway 64 and 275, and I think Richmond. I think it's the only 3 that are actually classified because of traffic volumes and stuff like that. Those are the factors that start to generate these classifications of how are they connecting areas of town from a transportation network standpoint, and what kind of volumes are they starting to carry, and of course, like associated with like speed limits and stuff like that. They're all factors that start to enhance
the intent of this change is to lessen the design standards on some of the less traveled streets. Is that a good way to say it?
Yeah, where you don't have.
So stepping in the direction of reducing standards, maybe not overhauling everything completely and saying we're gonna reduce everything across the board, but saying on the busiest streets, we wanna put our best face forward.
Yep.
On the less busy streets, we can probably reduce it a little bit. I just want everybody to kind of hear what it is that we're saying. Like, my thought is that it's easy enough to define this so Loon doesn't have to battle everybody. It's, you know, what road classification do you face? And if you don't like it, you ask for a waiver,
Yeah. And then-
right? I mean, that's it. I think it's black and white. I don't think there's gonna be a lot of challenging. I think this road is one thing and you think it's another.
Yeah, and then the thing, kind of thought process, I agree 100%, Kyle, is that when a new development comes in, is that we have the definitions of those roadways in this ordinance and parameters to assign to new developments, so that if something's coming in, be like, yes, this does serve a connectivity of the local area, it's just a local road, or does it provide a transportation over a couple miles that is more of a collector arterial type roadway? So a lot of the arterials, I'd say, are already established.
Pretty well defined.
It's probably more of the collectors type scenario where you're connecting the arterial roads from point A to point B, something from 252nd to 264th on a new development per se. Something like that, so yeah.
So this may not address all the concerns that we heard in the public hearing, but it is a step towards dealing with this issue on some of these less traveled roadways. Correct. Yep.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'd ask for motion on this item to amend the existing design standards. You think you do it again? I make a motion, we deny the request to amend. I think we need to stay with our existing standards. And the lots will sell sooner or later. I will feel this, I mean, we've got people who've already, Ace in the dentist office, they've already complied.
The dentist office, the strip mall that's right next to Ace is completely within the design standards. The metal buildings that are going up where the Beefcake is at now, they're able to meet all the design standards as well. The current ones. So.
Yeah, you need a second. Or not?
Sorry, but I'm kind of leaning towards Kyle too. You know, when we first talked about this thing, we were more concerned about 275. And
That has changed, yeah.
And we weren't really thinking about a whole lot about Richmond Road because a lot wasn't happening on Richmond Road, but we were hoping it would someday. So I totally understand Natch Rider's side, and maybe that's something that we can modify. You can tweak a little bit to, it's just like the roads. It's a secondary road. So we reduce that slightly. And I think Rune has a better handle on what that could be. I mean, if there's going to be nothing but employee parking on the side of a building, why do you need windows in it? Why do you need all that kind of thing to be? I mean, we have commercial buildings that have a fence and trash cans and you hide your AC units and everything else, and that doesn't look the greatest from the road, but you can still see it. So I just don't want to change the frontage. It's got to stay. We need to be.
I'm inclined to agree with what Brian just said. I'm sympathetic because I understand, you know, a construction company is not a retail business where people are coming and going. You don't have anybody but employees coming and going. And I look west on Richmond, going clear out to the golf course. I mean, those buildings are all steel buildings with nothing pretty on them, and that's Richmond. So I'm inclined not to keep this too stringent. If we have some kind of a way to make it a little easier for people, I'm
Brandon died for lack of second. So someone needs to make a motion to amend the building standards to what? Go ahead.
This is my recommendation, because I'm the one who's had to be dealing with it. If we do that, I would suggest tabling it so I can get a map from Greg that individually shows what each street is, because I'm not gonna be, because it's gonna happen where someone's gonna say, well, it's based on volume sometimes, correct? Both of you know this.
Volume is one characteristic, but there's other.
So am I gonna be requiring traffic studies from these people for facade? But I could, because if someone says, well, actually, you, in the map, you just designated that. Again, I know I'm gonna have these conversations. It's not if, it's when, because I deal with this every day. So the next step will be then, well, hey, can we change this road? And then we did a traffic study and then we amend our road. And so to me, that's where we just need to make sure that if we do this, we have a map that shows each individual road, exactly what it is. You guys agree with it. I think there are some roads in particular that are classified to your definition that maybe, in my opinion, shouldn't be. But I guess, again, you guys tell me what to do, so that's
In the
fine.
future, they could be. I mean, with the growth of
Well,
you're gonna have.
so obviously, it can change, but it's unlikely. A local road is never gonna become a collector arterial. A collector could become an arterial depending upon how development occurred throughout it, but that even is fairly unlikely. So I agree with you completely. We wanna have a map, we wanna have it defined, we want it as black and white as we can get it. And I believe we can get to that point.
And
Because we don't want a bunch of
No.
I guess maybe this is my suggestion. I might be speaking out of turn, but as a stepping away as someone who lives in Valley, I would think, hope, suggest that whoever's bringing this forward pays for that map to be created and not the city. Maybe that's just overstepping my bounds here, but again, it wasn't brought forward by me. So it's going to take a while for Greg to create this map, because he's going to literally have to go through every single street in Valley and highlight it either green or red or orange or whatever. And then it's just something that we have to keep updated along with all of our other maps of, hey, we've got a new subdivision, we've got this, we got to update that map. So I just need something. I don't care either way. I just need something that when, whoever comes in and says, hey, this, I can point to the map and say, this is what was voted upon. This is what it is.
Are you listening, Greg?
There's not, there really isn't too much to it, because you start at the high end, 275, 64, you get down to what are the collectors, everything else is local. So it really isn't too much of an effort to do.
Yeah, as long as I have something that I can go back to
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
non-negotiable.
Exactly.
This is what was amended in. This is what's required for this color of road.
I hereby appoint Kyle to do that.
You have a city engineer.
In your spare time, be assistant engineer.
Give me 3 different color markers.
We'll get you 64. All right, I amend my motion that we table this item. Now do we have a second? Yes. All right.
Second.
Brian. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. Thank gosh. Okay, the last item on the agenda, and nobody gets to leave.
Okay.
All right, item 8D, Flatwater Lake Estates, which is going to be called Champion Shores, substandard blighted study, consideration recommending whether such development project is substandard and blighted. If you've been by this, open the public hearing.
Andrea Griffin, City Attorney's Office. So this is another TIF project coming back through. You guys have been through this before, so this is the first step. So the developer has put this forward to request that we make recommendation to City Council that they declare this area to be blighted and substandard pursuant to the TIF statutes. The blight substandard study was included in your packet. You should have had that. It's got the map of the area and everything in there. I know the developers and their representatives are here. Do you guys have any specific questions? But what's in front of you today is to make a determination if you're willing to recommend to the City Council that they formally declare this area to be blighted and substandard, which is the first step in the TIF process.
Any questions on Andrea? Hampton Joyce is, did you know, is right across from Flatwater.
So if this step is taken and TIF is used for financing of it, and you give us a summary of kind of where we're at as a community, does this still fall in line with where we should be
As far as the
as
light
far as the
percentage of light percentages, yes, we are well within our
That's what I thought. I
requirements.
just wanted to hear it on the record.
Now, the request on this so far is $5 million on a $75 million project for 5 to 6 years is all. And most of that funds will be used for these folks are here. If they're gonna do on the east side, they're gonna have have public access to swimming and fishing and pickleball, if I'm saying it right, pickleball courts. And a large amount of that $5 million will be spent putting that in.
The public type
Public
improvements.
Which would
But
be-
this is just to approve the blighted stuff.
Yes, so this is
Period.
step one. You will be seeing, the next thing you guys will be seeing as the planning board is gonna be, the redevelopment plan, which if you recall, your role in that is to, make a determination that that redevelopment plan is in compliance with the comprehensive development plan of the city of Valley. That's gonna be the next time you see that, and that redevelopment plan is gonna have a little bit more information on, what they're doing and the numbers and all of that. However, just a reminder that your role is just to keep it in line with the comprehensive development plan. But that's good, it's good information, and that's kind of the overall project. And obviously they're here too, so specific questions, I'm sure they're happy to answer.
Anybody else from the public want to speak on this? Or, if not, I'll close the public hearing. Discussion and questions of planning commission members? I guess one thing when we look at these blighted studies, a lot of it's just boilerplate, of course. But the one that sticks out with me is safety. And if you've been by that particular area out there, obviously it's not finished. It's full of big sand piles. Obviously a pretty deep lake, and it has to be developed. And it's right there, in pretty much the middle of town. So, anybody else have anything on this?
It's just unfortunate the way they word it,
Yes.
blighted. I mean, we've lived with, when you're on the edge of the metro area, you can
Water and sewer,
you can blight anything.
yeah, you can do anything.
And it was just a term that
There's a drainage.
was made, and progress seems to catch up faster than what a landowner can take care of it. No.
Go ahead.
Might as well, I'd talk all the time anyways. I think too, part of that, correct me if I'm wrong, that engineers who do it, part of that blight is the floodplain. So that's just a little reminder too. Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg. But that also plays a part. I don't know how significant, maybe a significant part, but of course, if you're in the floodplain, it just automatically, quote unquote, is substandard because you got to bring in fill and you got to do all the stuff that we up here all know about. So just a FYI, because I kind of agree with you, Brian. It's not a nice sounding word or the reasons for it, but the floodplain really helps with that, blighted study because again, the work is required.
If they just leave it substandard, would be fine.
I mean, truly blighted, if you were nothing, right?
Right.
Just give it away and let somebody develop it, but it is not worth nothing anymore. True.
Brett Ballard, 1140.
You're not reading that stuff, right?
You're right. So that standard, and I think I went through this when we did Catalina, that is in the community redevelopment law. They use those words. We don't think it's quite substandard. Those are just the buzzwords. And then under there, though, there is a set of criteria, definitions, which is why cities and developers alike, we can go get an independent engineer to prepare that blighted substandard study. So you just don't take our word for it. Take an independent evaluator. So I just thought I would opine just so people know it's not us, it's not the city, that's an independent engineering firm doing that analysis. Any other questions for me?
Any other discussion? If not, ask
motion to recommend this to city council.
Jim? Second,
Second.
Kyle? Any other discussion? Voice vote, Christie?
Kyle,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Danielle's not here, Jeremy's not here, Greg,
Yes.
Motion carried.
Jim.
Yes.
Sorry, Jim?
No.
Anything else, Ruth, for the good of the cause, for Greg,
Still.
Andrea?